video here, I'm going to tell you why that I won't buy a brand new Miller or Lincoln welder. It's got nothing to do with their quality or how they weld or anything like that. I actually do own two of them, two pretty good sized units. One is a Dial Arc 250 HF that I use in the shop. Works great. Use it a lot for TIG welding. And then I also own a 300D Lincoln, which is a diesel powered mobile welder. But there's a reason I won't buy any of their equipment brand new, and that comes back from around 2012 when I was just starting out. I was working full time, but I decided I was going to start a little welding side business, I guess you can call it. Started out pretty small, just doing some local welds. I live in an agriculture area. I live out in the country, and I got some farm work in that. But during that time, uh, there was a fab show in Chicago at McCormick Place, the Fab Expo or whatever they call it. Um, so the wife and I decided we're going to take a ride up there and look around. And I'll tell you, if you ever get a chance to go to something like that, it's pretty darn amazing. I mean, they bring out the best of the best, and it's just amazing. Uh, while we were there, we're walking through, and I seen a Lincoln booth. And I thought, well, I don't have, at the time, I didn't have much of a welder. I had a small MIG welder and maybe a small gas powered welder. But I thought, well, I'll go there, see what they have, what they can tell me about it. I walked over there and looked around a little bit, and I, seen a guy over there, one of their reps, and I started asking him a little bit about it. And at the time, I mean, I was just starting out, so my pockets were turned out. I didn't have any big money or anything to spend, but I just wanted to, get a little information. Well, he was kind of like, yeah, here's a brochure. I'm kind of busy. Go away. So, okay, whatever. And so we walked through and looked at other things and come across the Miller booth. Went in there and basically got the same treatment. Here's a pamphlet. We got a website. Go on there. We don't really have time for you. And I think it pretty much stemmed from I didn't have that $500,000 PO sitting in my pocket waiting to buy their latest and greatest automation equipment or, you know, 75 of their welders or anything like that. I just wanted some information, but they weren't too interested in giving it to me. During that time, I also learned about a couple other companies too. And one of them, these folks right here. Now, these folks here at Hypertherm, if they were to charge twice as much for their equipment that anybody else did, I would still buy it. And there's two reasons for that. One is it's the best in the world. Their plasma cutter, I mean, I've had this thing since probably around 2000, same era, 2012, 2013. I've used the hand cut. I also use it on a 5x10 plasma table with a machine torch and all that. And the thing just works every time. I've never had any trouble with it. Um, it just every time it works. Actually, when it was on the plasma table, I had it set up on a shelf kind of thing, high up in the air, and I mean, I never really seen it. It was just always there. The only thing I had to do is plug it in and run the table. I mean, I never went up there to look at it or check on it or do anything to it. So it's been an amazing unit. But the main reason that I would buy from them, no matter what, is when I was at that show, I went to their booth and they treated me like I was their only customer and that their whole business relied on me. I mean, there was like three people that come over and specifically talk to me and I explained my deal is like, hey, I don't have a pocket full of money here, I'm just starting out. They thought that was great. They just went out of their way to tell me about their product. They had kind of guy that was more sales oriented. They had guys that was technical oriented, and they had a guy there that was, he kind of used them. I mean, he worked for him, but he used them a lot. And every one of them is trying to, teach me the basics, the intricacies, what would be good to start with, what I would need and everything. They were just great. Um, there was another couple companies. One of them was Kawiki Anderson. I remember that guy. they had a plasma table that was on display, and it was high tech industrial. It was big. It was high definition. It had bevel compensation. It had all kinds of bells and whistles on it. So I went over there, and the guy come over, and he says, "Oh, what do you think it is?" I said, "Yeah, that's nice. It's a little out of my league." And I says, he says, "Yeah." He says, "You never know." I said, "Well, how much something like this go for?" And he says, 250. I said, "Well, darn, I didn't know that." I said, "I got $250. I give that to you right now." Of course, he meant $250,000 for this unit. So we kind of laughed about it. I told him, I said, "No." He said, "You know what?" He says, "You never know." He says, "Maybe, you get started." He says, "You be in the market for one of these." I said, "Yeah, it'd be nice." So we talked a little bit like that, and my wife was there. So we went on. There was near the on our way out, I think it was near the end when we were there. There was a company called Ameda, and they had a laser cutter set up that was in operation. They were cutting some steel in there, and I just wandered over, kind of looked in the window and watched it work. And there was a girl there. She come over, and she said something about it, and I explained to her. I said, "Ma'am," I says, "I don't want to waste your time." I said, "This is way out of my league." And she said, "No, no, you got to look at this." She said, "You got to see. This is cool." And she was really excited about it. I thought, that's cool. And so she showed me how fast this thing was cutting and everything it was doing and everything. And it was, I mean, a beautiful machine. But just the way she was so excited about it and just proud of their products, it was very nice. And I told her, I says, "You know what?" I says, "Like I said, this was way out of my league." I said, "But maybe someday it won't be." And I said, "I tell you what," I said, "if I'm ever in the market for one of these," I said, "you're at the top of my call list." And I told the guy from Queek Anderson that same thing, and it was kind of funny. About a week later, the guy from Queek Anderson called me, and he said, "I don't know if you remember me." I said, "Yeah, I remember you." He said, "Well, I remember you." He said, "Because," he said, "you were there with your wife," and he says, "you were just funny." And he says, "Everybody there is so serious, and you got these executives there and people trying to sell, millions of dollars worth of equipment and people trying to buy millions of dollars of equipment. You're just there with your wife." And he said, "It was cool." And I said, "Yeah," I remember you. And he says, "You in the market for one of these machines yet?" And I said, "Well, you got that thing down to $250 yet?" And it turned out I never did get big enough to get into that type of machinery. But I'll tell you what, anybody, I worked for a lot of big companies and everything. And if I had any say in it or heard something about they may be buying some equipment or something like that, um, those are the three companies that I would, just go out of my way to recommend. Was, well, like say Hypertherm, definitely, Queeky Anderson. I mean, get a hold of this guy, um, and Ameda. And I would tell them, I said, Ameda just got employees that are excited about their equipment. I mean, they just got pride in it. So that was one of the big things. And like I say, um, I own Miller and Lincoln products, but I've never bought one brand new and never will, because their companies just didn't do anything to deserve my money. They didn't. They didn't treat me even like I was ever gonna be important to them. Like I say, you could buy their welders all over the place, and they don't really care. Uh, but maybe you start out with their low end MIG welder or something like that, or you buy one of their hoods. That is another story about what they charge for hoods. Uh, but you start out, but maybe all of a sudden things take off, kind of like it did in my business, and all of a sudden you're one of them guys with that PO in your pocket. It's got a pretty good sized budget, and maybe I'm one to hold grudges or something or take things the wrong way, but that PO would be going somewhere else. I'll show you here in a second what I did end up buying. I've had good luck with that company. Um, but yeah, it's people have to treat you right. Uh, just, I mean, I didn't expect them to spend an hour with me while these $500,000 PO people are standing over there. But I mean, just all you had to say was, "Hey, I'm with this client over here. If you could wait a few minutes, I'll be back and we'll talk about it." That's all I had to say. But they wouldn't even do that. Um, but yeah, the fabrication show, I think you call it. I don't remember what they call it now. It's been a while. But metalworking fabrication show. It was at McCormick Place in Chicago at the time. But if you ever want to go to something that's amazing, it amazed me the size of the equipment these companies bring to this thing to show up. There was and I'd have to look it up. I can't remember their name, but they're big in it. They had a rolling machine that was massive, and they had a piece of 6-inch hot rolled steel rolled into a ring, 6 inches thick. And that's how big this machine was, and how they get it in there, and how much it costs to get it in there to set it there to show for a week or so. It was amazing. But yeah, so this video came up because I'm kind of cleaning my shop up and everything. It's been quite a while since I've worked out here. Got a desk job now as an engineer and been doing that for a few years and just haven't gotten out here much. So I've been cleaning up out here, kind of organizing and remind me some of the stuff I got. I got a ton of stuff from when I had my shop and everything, but it's right now it's quite a bit disorganized. I do still have my 5x10 plasma table, which is in storage right now in the barn, but I'm looking maybe to get that going again because this year hypertherm. I got a besides the hand torch that comes with it, I got this machine torch here that I use on my plasma table, and like I say, it's like bulletproof. Set it and forget it. Change the consumables in it, and that's one thing you got to watch with hypertherms. They're so big that you got to really kind of make sure when you buy consumables. That's the only thing I've ever bought for it before was consumables. Um, but make sure they're real hypertherm stuff because there is a big difference. There's a lot of counterfeit stuff out there that I know at the time eBay was bad for it, um, but the materials used in those consumables makes a big difference. It's a big deal, and the counterfeiters aren't using the best of the best. Consumables ain't super expensive, so even if you get a little bit of work out of a counterfeit or something like that, you save a couple of bucks. Is it really worth the trouble? I mean, it's stupid. And like I say, Hypertherms makes just amazing products. Is whatever materials or machining or fabricating they use to make these consumables is just a step ahead, and you'll never, that I know, ever have trouble with a Hypertherm consumable. Whereas, I got, these counterfeit ones are to, untrained eye, I guess you could say, is they're pretty much undistinguishable between the real thing. I mean, they got the marking on everything, but I've had some that I had gotten by mistake or by my lack of knowledge of where I was buying from that just crashed almost immediately. And here I am trying to cut something out on a plasma table, maybe a lot of something, maybe it's something kind of intricate, maybe it's an expensive material, and the consumables blow out and do something stupid to my part. Would that save me? The only thing that gave me was a headache and a bill, a extra cost. I got to reset it up, mess around, middle of a project. So be very careful with that. It's probably with any company is that's very big. There's going to be people out there trying to scam in and make counterfeit stuff. There's countries that support that. So anyway, this video was that I like I say it come up into my head because I was cleaning up and getting things organized, and I kind of remembered that. Like I say, it was I guess about 13 years ago now that happened, and it still sets that way with me. So I don't know if you're the same way, but yeah, I'm gonna continue on organizing shop, getting some things going. Hopefully, I get that plasma table set up and rebuilt. I got some work to do with that. Uh, so yeah, maybe if there's some videos you want to see that kind of stuff, just leave a comment and we'll get these things going. I'll show you around, and appreciate y'all watching, and y'all have a good one.